In a free country, blessed with free speech, why shouldn't our workforce be free to choose on a level playing field whether they want union dues and rules or whether they want complete right to work freedom? So here to comment, who knows a thing or two about all this, former Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia. Eugene Scalia, great to see you, sir. I want to just focus or start with this PRO Act because I don't see this as pro-growth. I see this as anti-worker freedom. Your take?
Well, Larry, first, it's great to join you, and I congratulate you on your new show. It's just terrific.
Thank you.
And look, it's a very, very serious piece of legislation. It would be the largest change in American labor and employment law in nearly 75 years. Large parts of it are intended to reverse losses that union leaders experienced in the U.S. Supreme Court. For example, one Supreme Court decision that says that when a union has a grievance with one company, it can't go out and strike against other companies that supply it. They want to change that with this bill. Other parts of it would, as you indicated, Larry, prohibit right-to-work states, which have had flourishing economies. It's where we've seen a lot of the job growth recently, and would import this really very misguided California law regarding independent contractors, so-called AB 5, which Californians themselves ended up reversing in a number of different ways, including when it came particularly to gig workers back in November's election. So you're talking about importing regulatory requirements which were too much even for the state of California.
With all the our liberal friends, but all the fruits and nuts in California. Right. So expand a moment on the Supreme Court decisions. In other words, this PRO Act would change or overturn Supreme Court decisions. How's that going to work?
Well, Congress writes statutes, the Supreme Court interprets them, and Congress certainly can go back and change those statutes so that they read differently. Although, as you note, at some point, the restrictions on worker freedoms become such that even constitutional questions can be raised. It really is important that workers have a free choice in elections and that they not be subject to intimidation when they're making those choices, which is one of the concerns that's been expressed about the card check provision. Another part of the PRO Act would give unions access to employees' personal contact information, their home numbers, cell phone numbers, and the like, the kinds of things that people ordinarily want to hold personal. So there are really a number of very expansive provisions here. As I say, the greatest change in labor law in nearly 75 years. And you do have to pause and ask whether a regulatory interference of this magnitude is going to help working Americans right now as we're working on that rebound from COVID.
Yeah, that's a key point. I mean, President Biden is talking about the backbone of the middle class, but I dare say, look, I'm not anti-private unions, but I dare say the role of private unions has shrunk so much. It's about 6% of the workforce, that's all. To me, worker freedom will deliver more employment incentives and more growth and prosperity than, for example, taking out the gig economy.
Well, I think we certainly saw that in recent years. And Larry, earlier today, the states, or rather the Labor Department, issued data regarding state unemployment rates. And I have found these state unemployment reports really extraordinarily informative during the COVID period because you see huge variations in how state workforces are rebounding. What we saw from this report is that actually half the states have lower than 6% unemployment. So they're doing appreciably better than the national average. But New York and California are, California's at 9% unemployment, New York at 8.8% unemployment. So we don't know all the reasons for that, whether it's the lockdown strategy or, as I think may be the case, it's the regulatory environment as a whole. You know, California is a wonderful state, many productive companies, but some have started to leave. And I think that part of what we may be seeing is jobs, employers reacting during COVID to those regulatory environments. Certainly, I think the governors in those states should be asked in explaining why their unemployment rates are remaining so elevated compared to the national rate.
So that's
regulatory policy may be part of it.
No, that's an important point, the state unemployment rates. And Are there linkages here? I mean, are there linkages to right to work? Are there linkages to card check, no secret ballot, things of that sort? Those are the regulatory barriers you're talking about?
Well, it's certainly the case that a lot of the states that are doing better, that are below 6%, actually more than a third of the states now are below 5% unemployment, Larry. A lot of those are western and southern states, but we see states like New Hampshire, Vermont doing well too. But the states that are, two of the states that are known to have the highest tax policies, the most regulatory policies, again, California, New York, it doesn't make sense to me when you're trying to revive or continue the growth in this economy right now to import the more restrictive approach toward gig workers, for example, that has failed even in the state of California. But that's what the PRO Act, that's one of the things it would do.
All right. Gene Scalia, former Labor Secretary. Well put. Thanks very, very much.